Well, we always said in the Corps, if you wanted to be a big flea, you had to run with tall dogs. And we've got two here with General Zenny, who there is no equal to him in terms of strategic thinking. And if a lot more of us had paid attention to him on active duty, and now, why I think perhaps maybe our difficulties would not be as great or our challenges so great. Thank you, sir, for your service. Thank you for all the times that you appeared before the Armed Services Committee and Intel Committee. I was chairman of a couple of those committees, and I tried to protect you as best I could. I had your back. And we have the Warrior Commandant with Al Gray, who always appeared in pictures and in person in all of our camouflage uniforms. He is the Marine's Marine. And so I feel truly honored to be here with such gentlemen. And to Walter Jones Sr., sir, thank you very much for this room. For Walter Jones Jr., who has been the leader of this effort, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your efforts, your leadership. We will try to catch up in the Senate. As you know, we're a little slow on some things. Some things we should be slow on, and other things we shouldn't. This is not one of them. Thank you all for coming here to support our nation's Marines. As all of you know, the United States Marine Corps has been a service in its own right since Congress protected the Corps in the National Security Act of 1947. We were always a little bit thin-skinned, a little nervous ever since President Truman had the idea of saying that we didn't need a Marine Corps. So we did that in legislation, and so we have that solidified in. The legislation that Walter Jones and I have introduced is just pretty simple. Let me explain. Today, instead of having a Secretary of the Marine Corps, we have a Commandant. God love our Commandants. Now our Marine Corps Commandants have always been exceptional men, always been exceptional, who have led us through hell and back and to victory for the American people. But at the end of the day, the Commandant of the Marine Corps reports to the Secretary of the Navy. Nothing wrong with that. But because despite legislation protecting the Corps, and despite the many heroic things Marines have done for our country, we are still subordinate to the other services in regard to administration and just simple recognition in regards to the definition of the Department of Navy, and it should be, and the Marine Corps. When it comes to recognition and when it comes to equal opportunity, this just isn't a name change. That's wrong, and only three words, a three-word bill can fix this. Walter has been working on this for years, and so I intend to take up with my cane handy. I'm for caning again. Perhaps we can do that in the Senate. So instead of calling it the Department of Navy, why can't we call it the Department of Navy and Marine Corps? Simple thing. Why can't we add three words to right and injustice? Why can't we add three words to remind the Secretary of the Department of Defense and the world that the Marines are second to none? Some say that we should not change because of something called tradition. Tradition. Well, there are many clearly worthwhile traditions that add to the esprit de corps of the United States military and the United States Marine Corps. In this case, it is hard to cling to tradition as any legitimate reason not to move forward. The Marine Corps has fought across battlefields, big and small, for our nation. They continue to do so. The men and women of the Corps have proudly put their life on the line for the greater good. In fact, when my dad landed on Iwo Jima 65 years ago this week, and then I had the privilege of going to Iwo Jima, and the first time that the Marines came back 15 years later, I can assure you he was an equal part of the invasion force. Now, the Navy put down one hell of a shelling, but it didn't bother the Japanese much in terms of where they were burrowed back in regards to all the caves. The Marines made the difference, the big difference. And I can assure you that the Marines leading the way in Afghanistan this very minute are an equal part of the force there. Is it too much to ask that the civilian who leads the military department in which they serve recognizes the Marines and the Marine service in his or her job title? I would say simply that it is not, and that it is not too much to ask that a simple title be changed in order to recognize the service. of thousands of Americans who have served and are serving their nation proudly in the Marine Corps. To me, it is not a bigger deal not to afford one of the nation's finest fighting forces recognition of their legitimacy. Now, folks, it's a little bit more than that. How many times has a commandant come into my office, and I have had the privilege of talking with that commandant, and I had their autographed pictures in my office on my I Love Me wall. And we start with Bob Barrow, and we end up with our current commandant. I could not have a prouder display. In almost each and every case, and not with Bob Barrow because I served under him and I had to go through boot camp with him, but at any rate, in almost each and every case, it's been some niggling, doggone thing where DARPA, who would be having a demonstration in their dog and pony show, with all due respect, of the greatest, forward-thinking technology and forward-thinking not Marine Corps, but military equipment to have the modern soldier, the modern Marine, whatever, to best help our men and women in uniform in Afghanistan or in Iraq or wherever they may have been. And I've been there because I've been chairman. And we have all these gizmos, and they're all very laudatory, and we want to put money into them, and the research and the development. Well, they go to DARPA all right, then they go to the Army, then they go to the Navy, and we're damn lucky in the Marine Corps if we get them 5 years later. And that is not right. What happens to a NATO meeting where a 2-star Marine, which is worth 4 stars in any other damn service, a 2-star Marine can't get in the door because his counterparts from other nations won't let him because he can't get a 3rd star. And then you go to the Armed Services Committee and say, we need 1 more 3-star Marine, begging the chairman and so on and so forth to say, please let us have another quotient, if you will, of a 3-star Marine. For Lord's sake, what is that? I think that would change if you added these 3 words. And I can give you more and more examples, but I'm not going to. There are other people that want to speak and that have a very essential message, certainly on top of mine. In the busy, hectic world we live in, especially here in our nation's capital, we sometimes forget there are things in this world that mean far more than money or policy. This legislation isn't about money or about solving the social issues of our time. This legislation is about honor and duty to the 9/11 force and readiness who can put cold steel on the enemy anytime, any place. The Marine Corps understands that. Marines know that honor and duty comes first. As the motto goes, Semper Fi. Marines will always be faithful. I just don't think it's too much to ask that our nation and the Secretary of Defense and all of our military establishment and those who are privileged to serve on the Armed Services Committee in both the House and Senate be faithful back, equal treatment. So as we begin honoring the 65th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima this week, let's recognize the many contributions Marines have provided this nation. Let's get this legislation passed. Thank you.